Hey everyone, welcome back. This is session number 9. We're nearly there. We're going to talk today about playbooks. So let's dive in. So in terms of agenda, we're just going to be talking about different playbooks you can execute and some things we've picked up on the agency side. So hopefully you can implement some of these and then you're off to the races. If not, it's a good starting point for you to constantly iterate and figure out what's the best way to move forward. All right. The whole notion about this session today is like let's talk about going beyond cold email, because cold email is just there to get the conversation started. But what are you doing to actually convert some of these conversations into something tangible? So, like I said, cold email will only get you so far, and what you want to essentially do is accelerate the overall conversion process. And the best way to do this is to go omni-channel. And what that means is you're going to be introducing other channels to accelerate the process and actually continue the conversation, or at least generate a little bit more awareness on other channels. And the reason you want to do this is because, well, your buyers are everywhere. So the expectation is you do this as well, right? Some of the best individuals who I know who are prospecting today, this is what they do, right? And this is where kind of the top 1% lies. You're not just reliant on cold email, you're doing a bunch of other things. And that could be a mixture of things, which we will talk about, right? So let's dive in. So there's something called sales engagement, and what I've derived it as something called sales engagement playbook. So what does sales engagement really mean? Sales engagement is a little bit of a newer space, and I really like this definition I got. I believe it's from Mailshake. Um, it essentially means the interactions and exchanges that occur between sales reps and their prospects or customers. It's the touch points that keep the conversations flowing and ultimately lead to a sale. Sales engagement encompasses how you communicate, at what frequency, and the substance of your interactions. Every bit of that definition is super, super important. And what this means is that you're trying to communicate to your this potential buyer or prospect across different channels, and you're trying to communicate them with a very specific message. And the definition mentions something called touch points. So touch points can be a number of things. This could be automated or manual emails. It could be outreach you do on LinkedIn or Twitter. It could be doing an actual phone call, using direct mail, sending somebody some content to consume, or even potentially trying to visit your prospect at an event, right? I think there's a few more, but that's the majority of it. There's two players that lead the sales engagement plays. One of them is a product called Outreach. The company is really great. Check out their blog. So one of the things that they've come up with is the AGOG sequence. I hope I'm saying that correctly, um, which is their actual way of or their playbook of prospecting for their company, right? It's a 15-step sequence spread across of just shy of a month. And it shows like, hey, you're doing some stuff manually, which is based on research, and then there's some stuff that can be semi-automated, right? So highly encourage you to check this out when you can. We're not going to go too uh, deep into this because it's out of the scope for this course, but I wanted to introduce it to you because this is what some of the world-class people are doing to just prospect and get meetings booked. And this is more, I would say, relevant to the mid-market and enterprise level, but something really, really good for you to know. Again, there's a lot of additional content. You can go to Outreach's blog and learn more. Uh, Outreach's competitor, which is another leading place sales engagement provider, is called SalesLoft, and SalesLoft has come up with something similar, and this is their, I guess, playbook or cadence you want to say. It's a mixture of emails, calls, LinkedIn interactions, voicemails, and all that. And again, the reason I'm showing you both these playbooks is because this is what the top-notch SDRs, BDRs, and individuals who are prospecting are doing. So just for you to get an idea of like how other individuals are competing with the same prospects for their time, right? So it's not necessary for you to go implement something like this straight away because again, these are a little bit more expensive tools, and like I'm not saying go and purchase these tools and do this all right off the bat, but I just want you to be aware of like, hey, this is what some individuals are doing, and these are some of the most kind of intelligent companies out there, and they've invested a lot into research to learn from this, right? Um, but again, I'm going to give you some simpler playbooks to follow, and I'm going to go through a bunch, and they're all contextualized. So hopefully you find value from this, and you're able to, again, get a good idea and implement some of this to your stuff. Okay. Um, So one of the things I come across quite a bit is that, how do we identify which of your audience is actually interested in any of your product or solution? And I'm like, hey, um, one of the things we could do is like, let's cold email this entire audience. Let's it's 1,000 individuals and be like, hey, we're doing a webinar. We're going to be doing a webinar on, and then you insert the solving for this problem. It could be anything that's relevant to your product or solution or even service, right? And then you see who's interested in attending. And if you were able to generate 50, 60, or even 100 individuals who are interested in attending, now you have a very filtered out audience. After that, what you can do is you can send them a follow-up email sequence and saying like, okay, fine, here are the details for the event, or you actually host the event now because now you have some good idea of which topic to talk about, and host the event and then follow up with those individuals who've attended, right? You want to keep it a little bit closer to a less amount of numbers, a less amount of participants, because if it gets too much, then it doesn't make sense. You kind of want to go quality over quantity on this, right? This is something we've used pretty successfully. It helps us identify who's interested in your product or solution, or who's actively on the market trying to solve this problem, right? At least in the short term. Another thing that seen work really well is this whole idea of co-creation of content and building relationships. And what this means is, for some of these larger deals out there in the mid-market enterprise, there's a lot of noise out there. I know there's a lot of various individuals who are not in favor of this type of playbook, but we've seen it work pretty well. You're definitely playing the long-term game here. Is that you want to cold email some of your prospects or stakeholders or key influencers in your industry and be like, hey, I'm doing a podcast, a webinar, or ebook or something. Would you be interested in participating? And they say yes. You'd say, okay, great. Um, let's schedule a pre-planning call. And the whole idea there is to initiate everything post the pre-planning call, meaning you're going to jump on a pre-planning call for 20 minutes and you're going to do a discovery interview. And you're going to ask them some questions pertaining to that podcast, pertaining to that webinar or ebook, whichever, and you're going to start building that relationship. Essentially, you do want to produce the asset, and there's a lot of individuals out there on Fiverr which you can give a Zoom recording to, and then they can make that into blog posts, or they can make that into LinkedIn clips or whatever, for fractions of the cost, right? Then you take that, you essentially want to build credibility and then distribute it to your respective channels and that individual, right? And then you want to keep the conversation going, and then you only want to pitch when relevant, right? For the most of the time, you want to stay top of mind with these individuals, and the very least, ask for a referral. Be like, hey, FYI, this is what we do. Like, would love some help. Please let me know if there's anyone in your network that may be interested. And because this individual is someone that's within your industry or within, I would say, within your ecosystem, there's a very high likelihood that you might get a referral from this individual. And again, you just want to cut through the noise and build that relationship. This tends to work for larger deals, and individuals who have, I guess, the patience, time, resources to actually go through the whole process, right? It does take a lot of work, but once you document the process, it does become extremely scalable, right? So highly encourage you to consider this type of playbook if relevant. Uh, we talked a little bit about like educating your audience. So one of the things that we've seen also work pretty well is when you cold email various individuals some content to consume, right? And then you're seeing who's engaging it. So it's kind of changing up a little bit of the cadence, where it's like, okay, I'm going to cold email this person uh, 2, 3 times, send them some pieces of content, and then like let me isolate the people who are actually engaging in some of this content, right? Um, I'm going to add those people then on LinkedIn, right? Um, and then I'm going to cold email them and put them into a sequence to book a meeting, because at that time they're a little bit more educated, right? This is great to warm up an audience or prospect, and it's really, really great when you have a newer solution on the market and you're trying to introduce this to an individual, right? This won't work well if they already know the the industry and the space and stuff. Like for instance, if you're going in for something that's extremely well known, let's say it's accounting software, right? You don't need to educate your audience on the best practices of accounting, because they probably already know there's enough players out there and stuff. So this wouldn't be the most appropriate playbook. But let's say you're coming up with some new AI technology, and or something that heavy in the enterprise place. You need to educate the audience a little bit more and warm them up. So that's what I would use this playbook for. Um, One of the things that we've seen with a lot of clients at one point is that they're able to generate a lot of people who are interested. They'll respond back, "Hey, I'm interested. I have a couple questions," and all of that. But they're not actually booking a meeting because everything's happening on email. So you're able to get interested replies, but you're not able to actually convert into meetings. And like the simplest solution I can suggest here is pick up the phone and call the people who said that they're interested, right? You might be getting 20, 30 people that are interested per month. Just call them, be like, hey, we had an email thread going. Let's book a time, or like, let me answer this question on the spot for you right now, rather than going back and forth on email. This is kind of called like warm, these are kind of called warm leads, quote unquote. Uh, and the advantage of doing this is that you've already built the relationship. So it's not like cold calling out of the blue. It's like, hey, we already had a correspondence going and you said that you're interested, but we weren't able to get something on the books. Tell me, how can I help? And you really just want to get in front of their face and provide that value up front. So I find that that tends to work pretty well. Okay, so at this, at a very high level, all you need to do is send cold emails, generate interested replies, and then pick up the phone and call them. And then after you identify with the right process, it's fairly easy for you to scale and onboard the respective people. There's this whole notion of account-based marketing, and outbound plays a pretty big role in it. Um, Account-based marketing and account-based sales is a whole nother topic and discussion, but essentially what you want to be doing is cold emailing a bunch of individuals, which is part of a targeted list of accounts. And what you could be doing is pushing them to a landing page or an asset or whichever. Um, Once you push them to those respective, I guess, pages, you want to make sure your Facebook and LinkedIn pixels are activated so you can kind of retarget them on those respective channels. But it'll also help you understand who's actually engaging with your content and all of that type of stuff. And then once you've identified who's been engaging, um, that you want to go after them and book a meeting, right? This is again a more of a high level strategy rather than a detailed playbook, but this just wanted to make you aware like this type of stuff can be done. It's like you're using cold email to push people to uh, like your website, and then the pixels are picking it up as well, and then you're going to show them another ad, right? Again, this is tend to be used more for higher LTV type of customers. And you want to show 360 presence, and you have the respective content and ad copy and ad assets and uh, respective landing pages built out, right? So this is, I would say, a little bit more for individuals who have those resources, but again, it works because prospects are going to see you everywhere. They're going to see you on email, they're going to see you on LinkedIn, they're going to see you on Facebook, and ideally your product is very targeted to that individual. So they see, okay, fine, it makes sense to like have a conversation with this individual because it solves a pain point for me. Another thing which is great to drive stuff for SaaS users and SaaS customers tend to be more on the lower end of the spectrum, meaning they have low ACVs and they don't have very high contract values. But you could cold email a bunch of individuals, and it doesn't require a phone call at that stage. You want to cold email to them and put the problem up front, be like, hey, our SaaS product solves XYZ, or maybe 1, 2, and 3, or potentially even just one, depending on how you want to structure it. You can go sign up for a free trial or a free account here, right? Again, I'm paraphrasing here. You don't want to use that verbatimly for obvious reasons, but essentially you want to use cold email to acquire SaaS customers or users, right? Um, Once they go to the website, or maybe they go to a landing page, they sign up. From there onwards, all the people who sign up for the product, you definitely want to call them and do more contextualized follow-ups. And you want to get them on the phone and be like, hey, notice you signed up. How can I help? And just be extremely resourceful, right? You don't want to spend a ton of time trying to diagnose and figure out how they can get how this product will essentially change their business. You want to go after the individual, be like, hey, they're trying to solve a very specific problem. Identify that problem and be like, okay, fine, use this product like this 1, 2, and 3, right? What this allows the individual to do is trying to go through their own mini buyer journey, and you're just facilitating it. You don't want to be going there and trying to convince them on how to use the product and convince them on how to get things done, right? All you want to be doing in this particular playbook is identifying an audience, cold emailing them, getting them to join or sign up for your trial product, right? And then once they've signed up, getting on the phone with them and saying like, "Hey, how can I help? This is how you use it. This is what you need to know," and then maybe doing 1 or 2 follow-ups. The reason I'm saying this is because these ACVs are small. It's not worth you doing like 5, 6 meetings with them, but it is worth for you to jump on a call for 5, 10 minutes and be like, "This is what you need to know to get success out of the product. Please let me know if there's any questions," and maybe a couple emails after that, right? When executed really well, you can consistently drive SaaS growth this way. Again, this is pertaining to individuals with lower ACV size. Just some final tips before we wrap up, around like different touch points and how to optimize your cadence. It's like, look, you definitely want to spread your touch points, right? You don't want to go all in at once. You want to make sure that there is some gaps in between. And the reason is there's individuals are all going through their own, I guess you want to say, buying cycles. Some are going to be on vacation. Some are going to be have other things come up. So it's going to take them time. So you want to spread your touch points over 30 to 40 days, right? Another thing is you do want to have a consistent message. You don't want to say one thing on one platform and go say something completely different on another. It will confuse your prospect, right? And lastly, you do want to focus on tightening the process as you go about it, and you tighten the playbook bit by bit, and then try to scale it. Don't try to scale one of these playbooks without actually trying to implement it yourself and trying to figure out what's the most appropriate way of doing this, right? So again, focus on the process and then you can scale. All right, that's it. Thank you so much, and I will see you in our very last session. Hope you're excited.